In this video, we are going to discuss John Locke's theory of social contract. John Locke is one of the most important social contract theorists apart from Hobbes and Rousseau. So what John Locke has to tell us about the origin of the state? Now, before we get into his idea of the origin of the state, let's take a look at briefly his life. Locke, who is often called as the father of liberalism, was born in Somerset village in England in the summer of 1632. He wrote many important books, including a letter concerning toleration, two treatises of government, and, of course, an essay concerning human understanding. These are the most important works. He had multidisciplinary interest. In fact, it is said about him that after Aristotle, he was the only man who had so much variety of interests in various disciplinary domains of knowledge. John Locke, in his book The First Treatise, is critiquing Filmer's ideas on the divine origin theory of the state. And in the second treatise, he is explaining the true original extent and end of civil government. Now, Locke died on October 29, 1704. Of course, a long life, he faced so many crises, but for our purposes, this much introduction is sufficient. Now, moving on to his political background, or the background to his political philosophy. We need to remember that John Locke sought to justify the glorious revolution of 1688. What was this revolution? This was nothing but overthrowing of King James II of England in 1688 by a union of parliamentarians and William III, who as a result ascended the throne as William III of England. He ruled jointly with Mary II as Protestants. Mary was the daughter of James II and had a strong claim to the English throne. So this is the background of that glorious revolution. We also need to remember that Locke was an ardent advocate of constitutional monarchy. In his two treatises of civil government, he argued that if the monarch ever behaved in a despotic manner, the people had the right to remove him from authority. Locke was brought up in the tradition of British conservatism. Therefore, he was not the sworn enemy of monarchy. However, he sought to establish it in the consent of the people. Until and unless a ruler has consent of the people, one does not deserve to be a ruler. And that's what Locke is making it clear. To repeat it again, if I don't have trust and consent of people, then I don't deserve to be a ruler. Anyone in any kind of polity. He draws entirely different picture. It's an entirely different picture of the state of nature. We know that Hobbes has a different picture, Locke has a different picture, and Rousseau too has a different picture of human nature. But when it comes to Locke again, he has different understanding of state of nature. For Locke, it is not a state of constant warfare. So unlike Hobbes, he is treating it as a state of peace, goodwill, mutual assistance, and preservation. And we know that Hobbes is treating this state of nature something like short, brutish, nasty, poor, and solitary. Unlike Hobbes, Locke is assuming entirely a different state of nature. It is a state of liberty and it's not a license. He's making distinction clear between liberty and license. It's not unlimited power of liberty. So the majority of people at this stage obey the law of nature. That is the law of inward morality. Now, in the state of nature, Locke tells us that men are by nature rational beings. They are driven by their inner nature to treat humanity, whether in their own person or in that of any other person, in every case as an end, never as a means only. But there are few persons who set aside the rules of morality in pursuance of their self-interest. So here it's very important to understand that Locke is not denying the presence of self-interest in human rationality, but he is telling that man is not driven solely by the concern of self-interest. He is different from Hobbes here. So why the state? Why do we need ruler? Locke is arguing that it is essential because in the absence of any established authority in the state of nature, it becomes very difficult to deal with such offenders who want to pursue their self-interests. What would happen if men become judges of their own cases? In that case, justice would not be secured. And in this respect, the state of nature proves to be inconvenient. Because when you are judge of your own case, how can you deliver justice? So in order to rectify this defect, Locke tells us that man is abandoning the state of nature and entering into civil or political society by means of a contract. Now remember here, inconvenient existence in this state of nature. What is that inconvenience? Every man wants to be a judge. And there is a problem of deciding to what extent self-interest should be pursued. Locke also believes that there are natural laws in the state of nature which consist in the rules of morality. And this morality or these rules of morality are implanted in the human conscience. According to Locke, natural rights consist in the perfect freedom and equality. Perfect freedom and equality of every man, not only to preserve his property, that is, what is his right to property? That is his life, liberty, and estate. Against whom? against the injuries and attempts of other men. So natural rights are these, not only these rights, but he can be judged of and can punish the breaches of natural law committed by others. So this is his understanding of the state of nature and natural laws. Locke is arguing that when men enter into political society, they surrender their natural rights to be judged in the cases of breaches of law. Now, this power is vested in the community, not in the individual himself. Now, individuals will retain still some rights, and these are their natural rights. The most important natural rights are life, liberty, and property. These rights, Locke claims, are inseparable from human beings, regardless of the type of government one gets exposed to. No one can take away these natural rights to life, liberty, and property. Now, Locke's picture of the state of nature is again hypothetical, and we by now must be knowing that social contract theorists are not telling us that there was historically a state of nature. They are simply assuming and putting forward logic. What would happen in the state of nature? Therefore, it's not a historical account of the state of nature. What is natural law? Locke is explaining us. Natural law, a rule for human behavior only, and one which is not a description of how men do behave. And I'm quoting here W.T. Jones from Masters of Political Thought. So according to Locke, natural law means a rule for human behavior only, and one which is not a description of how men behave, but a statement of how they ought to behave. Hence, by his state of nature, which is paradoxical enough, he is mainly telling us something which is not natural or historical. When he is saying that in a state of nature men are free and equal, he does not merely mean that there was a time in the past when men were in fact free and equal. He means rather to assert that they ought to be free and equal. So it's not hypothetical only. He is imposing these ideas on our contemporary existential conditions. He is advocating a case for liberal principles of life. Human being is supposed to be free and equal. Locke's theory evolves at several stages. And that's why people have different accounts of his theory of social contract. There are several stages of the contracts. And that's why it is making a clear departure from Hobbes' position. Hobbes postulates that society and state are formed together. They are dissolved together. On the other hand, contrary to Hobbes, Locke is saying that society and state were created in different steps. Creation of society is the primary step, setting up of the government is the secondary step. So, if the government is dissolved, society does not disintegrate. Order will be restored by setting up another government in its place. That's how Locke's social contract theory is telling us. Now, the contract and consent in Locke's description have three stages. Again, to repeat that. First, men must agree unanimously to come together as a community at social level and pool their all natural power so that they can act together to uphold one another's right. Secondly, all the members of that community must have agreement, and that agreement must be based on majority vote. And this agreement is regarding what? This agreement must be regarding setting up legislative and other institutions. So first society is emerging, then legislature is emerging with the majority vote system in this contract. Now, here at the third stage, those who are owners of property, right to property, because he is assuming that nobody can take this natural right to property. So owners of property in that society must agree, either personally or through their representatives, to whatever taxes are imposed on the people. Until and unless these things happen, contract will not take place. So it's a sort of trust in his nature of government. Or we can say that government is like a trust. It is bound to act within the terms of its constitution. It cannot go beyond people's trust. And this is how there is a distinction between the process of formation of society and state. So it's very much clear that Locke places government under the control of society. He leaves no scope for absolute rule. And in many ways, he is very different from what Hobbes is telling us. So for Locke, any kind of absolutism, as envisaged by Hobbes, is ruled out by John Locke. And what is the ground of ruling out such kind of absolutism? The ground is that people hold their natural rights to life and liberty as a sort of trust from God, so they cannot transfer it. These rights cannot be transferred to arbitrary power of another. And since government is set up to protect property and other rights and not to undermine them, therefore government may not take or redistribute property without consent. Everything goes with consent. While Hobbes is creating absolute sovereignty, Locke evolves constitutional government. Hobbes is postulating an unconditional surrender of natural liberty to the sovereign because in his system of thought, natural liberty is the source of constant conflict and consequent anarchy. He is postulating conditional and partial surrender of natural rights, where some natural rights are fundamental. They cannot be given up because they are the cornerstone of freedom. This is how Hobbes is differing from Locke, and Locke is differing from Hobbes. So what is the nature of sovereignty in Locke's theory of social contract? According to Locke, people give up their natural rights to just obeying their own case. Correct to say that? So what they are giving up? Their right to be judge, right to be self-judge in their own case. And thereby punishing the offenders of natural law. So two rights they are giving up: judging one thing and punishing. These two rights they are giving in their own case or in the case of other persons. Now this right is vested in what? In community now, common power, or government which assumes the role of empire. Now we need to remember that this right is surrendered on the condition that their rights to life, liberty, and property will be protected and kept intact. So it is the society which retains the authority to watch whether the government is exercising its powers strictly in accordance with the terms of the contract or not. What does this imply when it comes to the nature of government? In the first place, government must govern with the consent of the people, as already becomes clear from his nature of contract. And secondly, it is the people who are endowed with the faculty of governing themselves. Because government is created by the will of the people, and people possess reason, conscience, sense of morality, knowledge of right and wrong. So government is nothing but an artificial device, and being an artificial device, it cannot embody superior reason. Furthermore, if in any case the government departs from its duty, then the people have the right to overthrow that government and set up another government in its place. So this is the nature of this Locke's sovereignty and his social contract theory. Of course, he offers people's right to revolution on the basis that people have the right to protect their right to life, liberty, and property. And on all these bases, he's justifying the bloodless or glorious revolution of 1688.